All right. Good evening, everyone. This is Paul at the Garland County Library, and I'm here with my friend Marsalis Weatherspoon, and he is the host here in a monthly series called Perceptions of Color, which intends to both celebrate and educate about all facets of the African American experience. And Mr. Weatherspoon here, he's a musician, he's a speaker, he's a public servant, and he currently serves as the president of the local N.A.A.C.P, Hot Springs branch number 6013. And this is the second episode in our series. We're going to have a monthly episode here. Like I said, variety of topics. This episode is going to take an educational look at the genre of Black horror, mainly from a film perspective. And Marcellus is about to introduce a very special guest presenter tonight. So I'm going to let you take over. Welcome. Thank you for joining us once again.
Good evening. I'm Marsalis Weatherspoon, has been stated. Thank you, Paul. Welcome to Perceptions of Color, Episode 2. And we're just going to get right into it. I'm very excited about this topic, Black horror, the menace and the message of Black horror. And I'm very excited about our guest, Mr. Daniel Coffey. He is an expert in film, particularly science fiction and other genres. And he also is a mixologist, and you can catch him on his live, and he also has a very active YouTube channel. So we'll let him talk about that a little bit more. But I'm just going to welcome Mr. Daniel Coffey, if we can get him on the screen.
How's it going? How's it going?
It's going well.
Again, I'm Daniel Coffey. You can find me on YouTube at Drink More Coffee, and also on Facebook at Feel More Coffee, A5 Cup of Coffee on Instagram. I do all types of mixed drinks, and also I do movie reviews all the time. So check me out. Appreciate the invite, guys.
Yes, thank you so much for being with us. And A5 Cup of Coffee, for those who don't know, and in keeping with what I've got on today, just shed a little light on what is A5 Cup of Coffee.
Well, it is actually my line name. Me and Marsalis are frat brothers, so both Deuce Clubs, of course. And actually brought Marsalis through, but definitely proud of that brother. He has done a lot. But yeah, we are frat brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and that's my line name. And I've incorporated it into my business and everything. So that's how we got here.
All day, every day. For those who don't know, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated is the first intercollegiate Black fraternity in the United States. It was founded in 1906 on the campus of Cornell University in Ithaca, New York, which is an Ivy League institution, and it was very groundbreaking for that time period. And we're still leaders, we're still trendsetters today, and doing what we do. So just wanted to throw that out there. Shout out to the bros.
Shout out to the
Absolutely. So let's get into it. Why we came today to talk about Black horror, and we know the horror genre in general is meant to, in some ways, frighten. Is meant to, in some ways, keep you on the edge of your seat and suspenseful. But there's also some education that can be had, and there's also some authorial voice that some of our filmmakers are putting into some of these works. So we're just going to dive right in and talk about some of the themes that come out with some of these various Black horror films. And so I'm just going to let you, take us on this journey of Black horror. And what are some of the themes that we're likely to see if we looked at a Black horror genre film?
All great questions. So from going from the '60s all the way up until now, the things that you'll normally see that mainly are incorporated in Black horror going to be, subject matter of, slavery or forced institutions, Jim Crow laws, things of that nature. And then it definitely progresses from there to, how we are treated in today's society. And the unique part about it is, I feel like even though the cinematography wasn't as great, maybe the acting wasn't as great because it was just starting out. The messages were left up to interpretation more so in earlier days, and we'll definitely be touching on that. And now, don't get me wrong, there are still things going on in our society, that affect marginalized society, especially Black people. Um, but I feel like in horror, it's starting to tiptoe past, it's left up to your own interpretation to being so heavy handed, like it's actually overtaking the movie that this is the message. And it kind of takes you out of the horror aspect more so, and it doesn't allow you to enjoy the movie or show. And again, we're going to touch on things that I personally feel like, and I believe, we talked about it before, that we both agree that it kind of overtakes the show as far as horror, and it doesn't allow us to feel that suspense or that tension or the on the edge of your seat. Is more so, well, this is the message, and we're gonna preach it to you. Here it is, right here in your face. So we'll touch on those things as we progress through the years, and we'll see where the questions and everything take us from there.
Right. And yes, of course, we want to be entertained and we want to be frightened, but we also want to have that didactic element to where we're supposed to be learning a lesson or a story is supposed to be told. But finding that right balance can be a challenge we'll talk about, like as you said. And you mentioned the 60s to the present. What was going on in the 60s and why was that such a pivotal moment in the film genre in general? And particularly the Black horror film genre?
Well, I'm glad you asked because at the time, and one of the bigger movies that we're going to be looking at is the original Night of the Living Dead. And like you stated before, what was going on in the '60s, of course, is it's time for civil rights. There's this big boom of civil rights. And a lot of things changing it, especially in that aspect, isn't always easy. And I definitely commend Night of the Living Dead for allowing the character of Being to just kind of be the shining star. And I actually went back, Marcellus, and looked at the actual cover of that. And one of the covers doesn't even have Being on it. And this is a picture of Being and the young lady that he was basically taking, I would say, for the most part, taking care of in this movie. From beginning to end, until unfortunately, spoiler alert, she dies. So if you haven't seen it by now, I mean, super spoiler alert. But it like you said, it was very pivotal for a Black actor to not only be in the movie in a large capacity and not be a stereotypical Black person, or speaking ignorant or anything like that. Not only that, but to outshine pretty much everybody in the movie. Like he stole every scene he was in, and I applaud the director and the writers for allowing it to happen, because that's it's definitely a huge step in the right direction to where we are now.
Sure. So there's two things going on concurrently. You have the larger civil rights movement, as you mentioned earlier, and when we talk about Jim Crow era versus civil rights era, Jim Crow was segregation and discrimination was de jure. It was the law of the land, whereas the civil rights era, segregation and discrimination are de facto, meaning that they are what's going on despite it being outlawed until we get to the Civil Rights Act. So that's going on the larger span of history, but also in film, you're seeing, Hattie McDaniels and Gone with the Wind being able to break through color barriers, and you're seeing this actor here with Night of the Living Dead, which he has my name, Dwayne.
Dwayne.
That's my middle name. Being able to be one of the main characters in this story, which we haven't seen before, because, like you said, up to now, blacks have been put in very small bit roles, or they're portraying very stereotypical black tropes.
Right.
So he really set the bar. And going to the 60s forward, I really like that that we see blacks telling our own story. And I want to go into Ganja and Hess and Blood Couple, because this same actor that's in Night of the Living Dead is also in this.
Right.
And this is us, telling a horror story nonetheless, but, telling our story. Tell us a little bit about Blood Couple.
Well, Blood Couple was a little different for me personally, but like you stated, it definitely had aspects of vampirism and actually telling that story in comparison with uh Black Christianity. Saying just certain phrases like drinking of my blood, this, that, and the other. You have that same saying whenever you go to communion. If you're Baptist, you go to communion and you hear the same thing. Eat of my body, drink of my blood, this, that, and the other. And you have this same comparison. And like you stated before, it's not heavy-handed. You still get the real big horror aspect. And just to kind of take a step back, just like the same actor, Dwayne Jones, he in Night of the Living Dead, he was able to portray this person that was smart, that was, he was quick on his feet. He was the one that was getting them through this movie. And even in Blood Couple, you see him being very, him. You always want to say, you almost want to say he's playing himself, because I feel like that's who he was. But and that's what made it so believable. Like, that's who he was. But the cool thing about Blood Couple is, you get those comparisons, and again, you're not stepping into that, what we'll discuss later, which is, the downing of Black people or anything. It's just telling a really good story. That's what it is. It's telling a good, and it has a lot of horror aspects. It's nothing that, of course, you would be afraid of today, but for the time, it was a really, like I said, it's a really good story, and it's all left up to your interpretation. Like, some people don't even see the Christianity aspect, but that's the cool thing about it. You can pull so many things from it, and it's like a work of abstract art where maybe I see something and you don't. And I like those aspects of those older movies.
Right. And I highly recommend it. I love the cinematography of it. Just seeing the black skin just pop on the screen, and the music, and like you said, the spiritual aspect of it. And there's so many gray areas between the spiritual, like you said, the Christianity, and just in general with black horror. It could go from spiritual to paranormal to supernatural, and just everything in between. So there's shades and nuances that we see throughout that. So I highly recommend Blood Couple. What are some other themes that we see in the black horror genre?
Well, just before we just hop into that, just because we're on Couple, kind of moving on into Blackula, like where it's telling, again, it's a vampire, it's a vampiric story, but it's told from the viewpoint of, what if Dracula was black? Like, it's told from that viewpoint, and it's not super heavy-handed, but it definitely shows what type of culture he'd be in if Dracula was black. And actually, it's still telling a love story. Him trying to find his love from the past. It still has that horror aspect where he's, he dropping bodies here, there, and everywhere. But at the same time, it's like, if you take a step back, it's again telling our story, a story that's been told before, but from our view. So just kind of moving from Blood Couple to Blackula, since around the same time period, I really definitely liked how that kind of worked out with kind of moving black horror forward. My dad actually watched Blackula, and he still I have no clue why he's still afraid of it, but he is. So it still it still sticks with people from that time period. But going back and watching it, it's a little campy, a little goofy, but it's actually still you actually still kind of stand back and look at him. You can kind of be proud of it, because it was just like it was tiptoeing on black exploitation, but it was still telling a really good story. So I definitely enjoyed going back.
And you just said something key. When a narrative or a book or anything centers on a black perspective, that is very, especially in that day and age, groundbreaking, because oftentimes, we think of the white dominant culture as the default, right? So
Right.
everything else is, centered around that white perspective. But when we're in the center of the story and the onlooker is looking at it from a black vantage, it's very fresh, it's very different, and I just love the opportunity to finally be celebrated and finally be considered other than through a white gaze.
Right.
As other films, so many times as that's the case. So I just wanted to thank you for that insight. So yeah, some of the other themes that we would see in black horror films. Go for it.
Okay, so glad you asked. So kind of moving on from more of the lighter side of things and how those things work. Kind of moving into like Lovecraft country. Like I absolutely enjoyed the show. Absolutely enjoyed that show. It was wonderful. I was on the edge of my seat for every episode. I had to see it that night. That's one of those things I didn't want to wait till the morning. But it touched on so many things that we were just talking about as far as sci-fi. It touched on the supernatural aspect. It touched on Black history, like actual events that happened in Black history, and it touched on people not being comfortable with who they are. It even touched on the gay aspect. It touched on that show touched tastefully. Except for one episode. There was one episode that I didn't feel like was. We'll talk about that in a second, leading into another. But every episode for me was so tastefully done. Even talking about those forced institutions that we were talking about as one of the things. That's what you're going to see in Black horror, and sometimes it can be just a little bit too much. But they did it very well. If you ever watch Lovecraft Country, you'll actually see this thing come up in the very first episode. It was where it was tense. It was on the edge of your seat, and they were in what's called a sundown county, in which, I mean, they existed, and they did it very tastefully, where Black people weren't allowed to be in those towns, after sundown, and if you were, it spelled definite trouble for you.
You said existed. I say exist.
Well, true. Yeah, we live in Arkansas, so to put it blunt, there are still some places I wouldn't go after the sun went down. To put it bluntly, but yeah, they, like I said, with this show, they did it so tastefully. Where, yeah, the episode did take that turn, and like I said, you were on the edge of your seat, wondering if they could make it out of town in time, if the officer was going to stop them on something bogus to keep them in the county, and it turned from that to complete horror, a horror show, like in the snap of a finger. And I was like you were talking about that balance. I think it balanced it so very well, because you had those few minutes of tension, and then it built up to this huge thing where Black people and white people had to work together to survive the night. And those differences is what caused the deaths that did happen. Those differences that some of them just couldn't overcome is what caused the deaths, which was, it was crazy, but it was also horrific, and it was a wonderful watch. So if you ever get a chance, check out that first episode. It shows all of those things just in one thing, and then the horror takes over as it should. The message is there, but the horror takes over as it should. So you're actually able to enjoy the show. So yeah, those forced institutions is definitely very present in the show, all throughout the show. But you're able to enjoy the sci-fi, you're able to enjoy the horror, you're able to enjoy the history that it does give you.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that Lovecraft Country is almost a primer on Black history in a lot of ways. Just from, like you said, the historical aspects of it, as well as the cultural aspects. There's so much music that gets played in the background. There's poetry that is
It covered absolutely, yeah.
so.
So, like you said, there's so much culture and history in it. I mean, if you don't get any enjoyment out of it, then I mean, I feel like you're just not looking for the right thing, because it covers so much in just, what, 9 or 10 episodes. It covers so much, and I feel like we are really benefiting from the whole streaming thing right now as far as shows go, because everything isn't forced in a hour and 30 minute, 2 hour movie. You get a chance to enjoy every character, and I think that's one of the strong points of this show is you saw character development, you saw character arcs, people being pissed off each other for 3 episodes and not getting along, and then you see their arc where they come back around. You even see one of the main characters and how she handles actually having the option to be white in that time. That was a big one for me. I was like, wow, okay. So would you take that option or would you not? Now, I know you're proud to be Black, but what if in that time period you had an option and she was able to enjoy that, but also at the same time you saw the self-guilt from enjoying that time? So like I said, the show itself covered a lot, and a lot of kind of brain tinkering things, because I honestly never thought about it, but having to see that on screen is kind of like, oh, huh, it's actually something to think about. So
It's very relatable.
right, absolutely.
So we've talked about that balance, and we've talked about being sort of a celebration of Black culture and all of that represents, and how Lovecraft executes it very well. And you want to just go ahead and dive into one or some others
Yeah,
that don't do it so
absolutely.
well?
So we're gonna dive into two things. It's gonna be them and the newer Candyman versus the older Candyman. So I want to, like I said before, it was one episode in Lovecraft Country that definitely kind of it straddled that line and almost stepped over it into what we are calling, brutalization of Black and brown bodies, or trauma porn. And it's like, who can really enjoy with that? And it was talking about, the historic fires, that burned down Black Wall Street, and in my mind, I'm thinking like, you can go back in time to any spot. Why would you put yourself in that situation? And it was powerful, but at a certain point, it was kind of like, wow, it's almost overkill. Now, moving on into the show Amazon Prime put out called Them, that actually had me very interested, because it had some of the same actors or actress from the movie Us, which was really good to me. But Them was a show about a family that had to move from their home for basically racist reasons. They were trying to get away from what had happened to them. I don't want to spoil the entire show, but moving into another town, the father gets a better job. They move into quote unquote better town, but it's a white town, and you get to experience the racism. You also get to experience some supernatural aspects of the town. But the thing about it is the flashbacks. For me personally, I got to like episode 5 or 6, and it just, you had to take a palate cleanse. I had to go and watch, me and Marsalis knows I love Family Guy. I had to go watch Family Guy and American Dad to do a palate cleanser before I finished the season, because it was so much that evokes so much emotion. And it's like, does that make it good that it evokes so much negative emotion? For me, it wasn't like a wondering like Lovecraft Country or some of the other movies we'll discuss later. It wasn't like a suspense or anything like that. It was just blunt force. Like, how can you enjoy this? They even had a scene that was so strong where it was like some of the white people in the old home took advantage of the wife being at home by herself, and it's like, Jesus, like, why am I watching this? Like, what is this? What am I supposed to get out of this outside of the negative emotion? So I gotta be honest, guys. If I had to rate it, that definitely took it down for me to like maybe a below 6, because I couldn't enjoy the supernatural aspect. It did have some nice supernatural aspects. It did have some nice horror when it came about, but those parts of it definitely overwhelmed me personally. How'd you feel about it?
I feel like there was enough of them to keep me wanting to see what they do with season 2, and maybe they will hear some of this criticism that has been leveled, because you're not alone. There's been a lot of outcry about the torture porn aspect of it, and maybe they will listen, because I saw a lot of good stuff that I wanted to kind of build on. I thought it was hilarious that you're the viewer, you have the benefit of hindsight, and so they're leaving, the South to go to Compton, which is a white community
Right.
in
At the time, yeah.
and they're
That's
like,
pretty hilarious. Now, I have to agree with that they leave the South to go to Compton, which is, at this point, an uppity type place. And it's like, Compton, really? But
right,
yeah, I completely agree that is pretty funny. I mean, like you said, it definitely has some nice building blocks, but I'm personally not clamoring for a season 2. If it does come out, I just for the sake of, what I do, I will check it out just so I can discuss it. And I'm in definitely different groups and stuff like that. But man, that first season, it really it put a bad taste in my mouth. I'm not even gonna trip and say it didn't. It
yeah,
was
it
a
was
ended for me.
yeah, it was a lot. After a while, like definitely later on into the season, I was like, okay, we got it. Like um, some of the graphic depictions that you see on the screen,
Like nothing
and
was left to the imagination. It was no cutaways or anything. It was just like it was there, and it's like, geez, okay, all right, I'm a cutaway. This is not.
right. Well, what I will say is, even though these films or shows or anything are portraying this on screen, this is still probably not even scratching the surface of what actually transpired
Fair.
uh, in during slavery, during segregation, during civil rights, and even today. So I think that's why the black horror genre is kind of rich for this type of interpretation,
Right.
because there's so many parallels, and there's so many things that you can do to this is horror, but in a way it's kind of our everyday life at the same time.
Yeah.
So, and you
You
talked about that.
you and I discussed this about Night of the Living Dead on how why Ben seems so calm in the whole situation. And my interpretation, we were talking about my interpretation of that was he's used to being, hunted basically. He's used
Right.
to being, that person that has to survive day by day by being careful, by thinking ahead, by, like we talk about the sundown counties, certain times I need to be in the house. I need to do this, A, B, and C to make sure that I survive for my family the next day. And Ben is used to all this. So when these zombies come out of nowhere, the white community isn't ready, but he as a black man is like, okay, this is kind of like everyday life for me. It's nothing that really does change. So like, moving forward into them, like you said, you're absolutely right. It's very fair to say that this is not really scratching the surface. But at the same time, it's kind of like, all right, somewhere along the line, it does get overwhelming to, have to, like I said, without taking out anything, is, kind of experiencing that part of, our history. It can be very overwhelming. It's one thing to read it and interpret it and be like, dang, have things going on in your imagination. It's another thing to actually have it bluntly put in your face, and it's like there's nothing to the imagination at all. So but kind
one thing that
of
you said.
heavy-handed. I'd like to jump into our next subject, which is the comparison from the original Candyman. That definitely had a lot to do with marginalization and gentrification. It definitely had a lot of love Tony Todd in this role. Tony Todd is one of my favorite actors, one of my favorite voiceover actors. If you guys didn't know, he did the voice for Zoom in The Flash. He made that scary. It's a CW show, and he made that scary. But I love Tony Todd, man, and pretty much everything that he does. Looking from that story, which was, again, a lot left for interpretation. Him from his history, kind of trying to find his love in the present day, and that mesmerizing and daunting voice he has. Hearing him say Helen is just I love it. I love the cinematography. I love the storytelling of that movie, and it makes it a classic. Now we jump forward from that, that interpretation. We jump forward into the new Candyman, which was not a bad movie. Don't get me wrong; it's not a bad movie. However, I will say it was really heavy-handed with the, and I think it didn't balance well the horror aspect and the actual message that it was trying to give with, the police brutality in today's America. Don't get me wrong; it's ever present at this point. With police brutality, I gotta say, with cameras that are around, with Facebook Live and things like that, I think we can both agree, things haven't changed. It's more proof that these are the things that are going on. But with this new Candyman, I don't think it balanced well of, this Candyman interpretation being more of a anti-hero of some sorts, against, the different atrocities that happen to Black people, and it just made the Candyman more of an avenger, and it kind of took away from the horror aspect. Don't get me wrong; I absolutely love the imagination and the shots of Candyman. It did make it scary where you couldn't see him unless he was in the mirror, and they just kind of showed different effects. It was kind of like that. If you just kind of the I watch too many movies, but if you ever watched Nightmare on Elm Street and you see the first kill where he's like dragging her up the wall and everything like that, you get those type of kills where you can kind of see them, but you can't, and it's just like it does have you on the edge of your seat. But like I said, the end and the lineage and how they portray it, I feel like it was really heavy-handed in that. But don't get me wrong, the imagination, the change that they did, for me, it made the movie worth making. It did make it worth making, at least that much. So, but if I'm looking at it from a critical standpoint, which I have to do because of what I do, it's just like, again, it's really heavy-handed on the whole, police brutality instead of focusing more so on the horror and then having that message up for interpretation.
Right, and just even zooming out from the horror genre, we're seeing a lot of reboots. Whether it's Man, or I'm thinking about Coming to America, the new one, and I just was like, they could have sat this one out, but people were wanting it and people were clamoring for it. I get it. So, but yeah, we're in a pivotal moment in film, like you said, with streaming going on. And you don't even have to go to the movies anymore. It'll premiere right in your living room. So I think we're in a time, like you said, that we need to be careful that we're not being over preachy and keep the artistic aspect at the forefront. And so maybe this is just a time to kind of reassess and reflect and go forward to better with the genre. And that goes from being over preachy and with the whole graphic depictions of Black brutalization.
Right.
So
I don't disagree with that at all. I mean, and don't get me wrong, there are plenty of movies out there that I feel like balance all of this very well. Peele's actual two movies that came out, which were horror, that honestly, it really took me by surprise because he was so much of a funny guy in Key and Peele, and now you see
Mhm.
Jordan Peele's actual work, and it's more so in horror, and it's kind of like you get that funny that he had in his show, but also you get the horror aspects. But he balances it all so well in Get Out. As a matter of fact, Get Out was a breakout movie. I don't think anybody expected what they got from Get Out. So there are definitely movies out there that do this very well. Us, as a matter of fact, I think Us was maybe more of a step down for him from Get Out, but it was still a very well done movie. It wasn't too preachy or anything like that. It definitely had a creepy vibe aspect to it. It definitely kept you on the edge of your seat, and it left so much up for interpretation. The quote unquote double twist ending, like
Mhm.
like I said, I won't spoil the whole ending, but of course, learning who Adelaide really was versus the voice. I mean, it was very well done, and it definitely played with Jordan Peele is really good at playing with expectations. As an example, it's always a running joke that black people are the first people to die in horror movies, right?
Mhm.
I've watched a lot of horror movies. It's not completely true, but that being stated, he plays with that a lot, especially in Us, where the white people actually die and they die pretty quickly at that, and then
Mhm.
it's the black people. You're like, wait a minute, why didn't they just kill the black people? Like why did he drag him all the way out to murder him? And they bluntly murder, the way. So he really plays with those expectations in us, and I find it really hilarious because you can tell he's doing it on purpose. Like it's not like taking him. He's not. He's funny enough where he's not taking himself too seriously,
Mhm.
and the movie knows what it's doing, and you can tell that it's not. It doesn't feel heavy-handed at all when he does things like this. So I really enjoyed Get Out and Us as far as making that balance between interpretation of with Get Out. What were they really saying? Were they saying that like people are jealous of our athletic ability, our builds, our things like that? Because that's what I got out of it. But other
Mhm.
people say they just want to put us back into a place where we're serving, we're basically serving, but with our bodies at this point. So
Mhm.
it's really a lot of different interpretations you can get from there, and there's no right or wrong answer, and that's what it's supposed to be, where it's not so heavy-handed.
I loved Us and Get Out. I thought that Get Out was hilarious.
Absolutely.
As much as it is, horror is freaking hilarious. And with Us and Get Out, I literally there were some spooky moments, and I'm not one of those people
It
that
was very
I scare. I don't scare easily like that. But I was like, oh, well, okay. And then it's compelling and smart. The symbolism of the husband's glasses in Us, and how he can't see without them. I think that was very rich, and of course, the fact that there are like these alternate universes. How, to me, he's talking about how, and he doesn't say this explicitly, but to make your iPhone, there's a sweatshop in China, to make our goods and services. That there's a manufacturing economy that kind of makes our the simplicity of our life possible. And there's um, a third world kind of setup that makes our first world experience possible. To me, that was my takeaway from it.
I definitely could. I definitely could see that. It would definitely dive into clones, but like I said before, um, it was just kind of at the same time the uprising. What if these people that are kind of left by the wayside, even though they're making our lives easier? What if they was just like, we're not doing this no more? Like we finna come and live the first world life. And that's I can definitely see that interpretation. That's is actually first time I've actually heard that one, but I can definitely agree with that. Like I said, with these movies, and if you have a decent point, you can say, "Hey, this is what this is symbolizing." Like, and nobody can tell you you're wrong. And like I said before, that's where that balance between horror and the message that's how it's supposed to be. You can take so many things out of it, or you can put so many things in it that may or may not be there, just depending on who you are. But like I said, moving forward into like I said, the funnier aspects of horror, like the scary movie franchise and Vampire in Brooklyn, which are the first two scary movies are hilarious, absolutely my favorite too. We'll see what they do with this next one that's supposed to be coming out very soon, but I'm pretty sure it's going to do a take on the new Scream movie that's coming out. But in any case, the first two scary movies, they know what they are. They are pretty gratuitous with the grossness of things that happen, but that's the Wayans brothers, that's their humor. So, you see these things, and even in this movie, it's the, like the running joke where people should stay together because, there's strength in numbers. And it's always that trope where we need to split up, like the Shaggy and Scooby. Yeah, we're gonna split up. You two go with them, and we're gonna go this way. And the black people are basically like, nah, we need to stick together. And so the guy's like, okay, you and y'all come with me, and y'all stay here. And the camera zooms out, and there's nothing but the black character standing there like, we gonna die, kind of playing a joke, turning the joke on his head, where black people die in the horror movies. But again, it's not taking itself serious, and it's a joke, and they're doing it on purpose. So like I said, I absolutely love the first two scary movies and how they play with those tropes. It's not as scary, quote unquote, as the Peel movies, but they know what they are, and they know how to play those jokes for huge laughs. And they do more than black tropes. They do the girl falling trope. They do the people doing dumb things trope, but they like overdo it. Like it actually has a sign that says safety and another sign that says danger, and she runs towards danger. So it's like they do it hilarious, but in most cases, I'm not gonna say the whole movie because some of it's kind of distasteful, but for the most part, it's tasteful jokes. But
right.
And then, like I said, going into Vampire in Brooklyn, which I feel like it's a funnier take on Blackula in my eyes. It's a funnier take on Blackula, kind of a retelling of the same story. The vampire trying to find his bride. If I can just get her to say yes to me, she'll be my bride, this, that, and the other. And you get that vampiric story. You get the horror with the wolf. You get the, he's dropping bodies left and right. You get this, but also you get that funny aspect from, Eddie Murphy being himself. He's just naturally, to me, one of the funniest people on the planet. Even still to this day, I feel like some of the things he does has me just laughing, hurting my stomach laughing.
100%.
But yeah, I absolutely love the take on that, showing black culture and showing, even Italian culture in that movie, if you paid attention, and in Brooklyn, and, kind of taking it, from Africa to Brooklyn. It's pretty neat to kind of see that aspect on, vampirism, like coming from Blackula all the way to down. So, yeah, I'm like I said, I dig the horror comedy. Those are hilarious to me.
Right. There's a couple of things as you were talking. I was surprised to see that Vampire in Brooklyn didn't have such a great score on Rotten Tomatoes.
I think it was like maybe 25%. Sometimes I go back and watch movies because I enjoyed them as a kid, and then I go back and watch them. I'm like, okay, I can see why people don't like this movie. Like,
yeah.
Parents were upset at the time. At the time, I was like, man, there's nothing wrong with this. And then I go back and watch it. I was like, okay, this is pretty terrible. Okay,
but I said that to say, I could care less when people say it. Like, it's hilarious to me, and I feel exactly the same way about Norbit. People panned Norbit, and Norbit is hilarious to me.
Absolutely hilarious.
Eddie Murphy just everything he says and does is just it just makes my side hurt. He's just he's just hilarious, just without even trying. So whoever you are, get over it. He's just funny to me. I
Absolutely.
personally
Like
feel.
it's almost like, do they hate Eddie Murphy? Like, what's going on right now? Like,
Right,
but yeah, I
right.
did see the I think the Rotten Tomatoes score was like a 25% on there or something like that. Or when I went back and watched it recently, and I was like, geez, like I mean, just just him being that type of character, because I'm not used to him being quote unquote serious. His funny moments was him playing somebody else, but as Max, he was kind of terrifying, to be honest. He was,
Right, right.
it's just the eyes. When he was ready to attack, all of that was kind of like, especially when I was younger, it was like, okay, I ain't used to him seeing him like that.
Exactly. I don't understand, but it's okay. The other thing with Scary Movie, I think it's funny that any of the Wayans brothers films, the Scary Movie as well, they can kind of be seen as time capsules as well because there's so many pop culture
Right.
references.
They date themselves very much. Yeah, absolutely, I agree.
So it's kind of funny. They were funny at the time because you were getting it like, oh, they're referencing that. Like the guy has the wheelchair and it has the Firestone tire,
Right.
and
Absolutely.
the tire fails, and they were in the middle of that Firestone scandal. So if you were living at the time, you understood what that meant. But even going back, looking back at those now, it's like wow, and it kind of makes me feel old because what was that, the 2000s?
Yeah, early 2000s. Like, yeah, absolutely. Those are actually, it's funny that you mentioned it because it's making me feel old now because my my grandmother actually took us to see the first one. So you could only imagine, because we thinking it's kind of gonna be like maybe a horror kind of funny movie, but we
Mhm.
didn't expect
Mhm.
what happened to happen in there. And
Right, right.
like, we like sitting next to my grandma, like, okay. And
Word.
the the next movie that came out, which wasn't that much time later, we were old. They felt like we were old enough. This is me and being in Chicago. We were old enough
Mhm.
to kind of go by ourselves. So she's like, "Yeah, y'all can have the second one," like because the first one
Mhm.
just took me for a loop. So yeah, it definitely makes me feel old. Like it's one of the first movies I saw by myself. So
Right, right.
yeah,
Well, yeah,
I feel you on the date.
absolutely. Well, let's kind of just put a bow on this. Is there any closing thoughts or just anything that if they want to get just a sense of black horror, what's something they gotta see, or just any other closing thoughts?
Absolutely. Definitely check out Love. Like I said, Lovecraft Country. Definitely check out Us. Get Out is definitely one you got to see. Get Out. You have to see Get Out. If we're talking classics, check out that Night of the Living Dead. I know it's an older movie. I know it came out in the '60s, but definitely check out the very first Night of the Living Dead, and even compared to the newer ones. Not so much. I wouldn't say Vampire in Brooklyn is a gotta see, but I would say the first scary movie. Definitely check that out. And just to kind of get out of the category of super horror or heavy handedness, just check those movies out. And no, most of the movies I named were pretty recent, so yeah, check those movies out. Give me your thoughts. Like I said, I am available on Drink More Coffee on my YouTube reviews. I am available on Facebook at also Drink More Coffee on my business page, and then my personal page at Feel More Coffee. Yeah, definitely check those out and let me know your thoughts. We do have a running group, me and a few of my friends and Alicia. That's called Let's Talk About Movies. Join the group. We're always talking about the newest movies and newest shows, and kind of giving you a heads up on movie news as well. So check that group out as well. It's called Let's Talk Movies.
Awesome. And we've been talking this long, and again, we haven't even scratched the surface of this whole black horror genre because we didn't even talk about even some of the more urban type of black horror films, like the Tales from the Crypt and
Tales
those.
from the Hood. Tales from the Hood is also, by the way, a must see. Don't watch the second or third one. They're very heavy handed and clunky, but that
Right.
one finds a really good balance between telling a good story, not only from the viewpoint of the mortician, that's basically the framing device, but also the short stories. It's kind of a small anthology that's going on in there, and it's a really good movie. Tales from the Hood. Yeah, check out that first one. It's definitely a must watch, a classic.
Absolutely. And before I forget, we are gonna have you make us a drink. Is that right?
Absolutely, absolutely. We're gonna
Okay.
actually. We were talking about splitting up in Shaggy and Scooby. We're actually gonna make a Scooby snack, guys. It's one of my favorite drinks during this time of year. So I hope y'all enjoy. Gonna use this glass here. Let's
As
go
we
ahead.
said that he's a mixologist, so he knows what he's doing. And while he's getting that together, let's see if we've got any questions from the audience.
Hey there. This was fantastic, very interesting, and I could listen to you guys talk for another hour. This was great. So, uh, Coffee, thank you for joining us. And Marcellus, you did a great pick here on your guest. Great choice getting Daniel Coffee here to join us for this program. So we did have quite a few questions I had in advance, and a lot of these are actually from my coworker Kalisha, who is probably the biggest movie fan out of anyone I know. She actually, when we were showing in-person movies here in the library, and we're hoping to resume those soon, she's the person who's been picking them for the last few years, and she's been doing a great job. And she has like colored spreadsheets on movies, keeping info and keeps track of everything she's ever seen. And it's impressive. But I think you covered a few of these, but I do want to ask her questions, and either one of you or both can chime in.
Sure.
Um, one of the questions is, why do you believe the horror film genre at large hasn't traditionally been interested in including black characters?
Well, I'll say okay. So I mean, it's a symptom of a bigger problem. Uh, you have what they call what people call whitewashing, different genres and things of that nature. Uh, it's definitely something that has been taken into consideration over the last few years, as far as who stars and what, and changing the face thing. But once again, this is a symptom of a bigger problem in Hollywood altogether. So it's because horror is a small genre of the bigger movie picture. Of course you're going to see it a lot more on a bigger scale on the smaller genres. You're going to see not that many black people. So when you do come out with a really good, what I call a quote unquote black movie, where it's produced or directed by a black person and has a black star, this, that, and the other, like Marcellus was saying, you actually get to see everything through our eyes, or through better lens than before. So like I said, it's just a symptom of a huge, bigger problem in Hollywood. That's all.
Right. I would say that we are in horror and we are in films uh, to some extent, but it's always in very small roles where you don't have a backstory. You're just a black face out there, or you're just a token uh, black best friend or whatever. So, and I don't think the horror genre is any different in that respect. And so, like Coffee saying, we're seeing people actually take an interest and want to see these stories, and they want to get our perspective on things. So I think this is a great pivotal time for the black horror genre and just for black filmmaking in general.
Absolutely, absolutely. Before we take our next question, let me go ahead and make this for you guys. So we're gonna take some Malibu rum. You can use coconut or mango. We're gonna use coconut today. About 2 ounces. We're gonna take some Midori, add it in. That's gonna give us our color and our flavor. We're gonna take a can of pineapple juice. Perfect. And then we're gonna add some whipped cream. Shake, separate, and ladies and gentlemen, a Scooby snack.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Wow. And this is just literally a taste of what you'll get on Drink More Coffee, his web series. He does this all day, every day,
Oh, you
doing
check me out on TikTok on all of it.
on all social media platforms. He reviews movies, he reviews shows, he makes drinks. So this is just awesome. Thank you so much for being with us today. Like, yes.
Yeah,
So
we could do a whole program just on that.
exactly. And then you mentioned Family Guy and American Dad. You know, I got to bring you back, and we got to talk about those shows because we could talk another 2 hours on those alone.
Absolutely, absolutely, and they're still coming out with seasons. That's crazy. Like,
Right. I'm up to like see episode 3 of the you know latest season. So, but Black Horror. Let's keep talking about that. Any more questions,
Yeah,
Paul?
yeah. There's a ton of others, so I'll just pick. So just for the sake of time here, since we're going to go over an hour, I'll pick maybe 3 more of these questions. Um, Here's another one from Kalisha I thought was really good. How do you feel about the way Black women specifically are portrayed in horror films today when compared to the Blaxploitation era?
you want to go first, or you want me to go first?
Go for it, coffee.
All right. Well, I gotta say, I'm actually glad she brought that up. I absolutely love the way and how strongly Black women are presented in these current movies. Even talking about the show Lovecraft Country, man, you get to see her live life as Hippolyta and everything. Like, again, one of the strongest warriors in history is being portrayed here, and then even down to the kids are presented very strongly. The young ladies are actually portrayed very strongly, and making those smart decisions. I love how they are portrayed now comparatively to just kind of being that eye candy most of the time. In the Black exploitation films, like you definitely got to see how they were, how they were dressed back then. Women altogether, let alone Black women, they were shown, as eye candy for all intents and purposes. But now it's more so, even with Vampire in Brooklyn, Angela Bassett's presented as a very strong cop in that entire movie. So yeah, I absolutely if I had to say, when they are put on Front Street, Black women are portrayed very well. Even in Us, if you looked at Lupita, her character playing 2 different parts, very different characters, but played them wonderfully. And like I said before, when Black women are given that opportunity, they smash it every time.
Right. As president of the NAACP, I got to look at it from that lens. And yes, with Blaxploitation, you saw the strength of women, and you saw their sexuality kind of at the forefront.
Right.
And you're seeing that today, like you said. But today, you're seeing more of the vulnerability, and you see that there are chinks in the armor. And I relate that to the civil rights struggle because it's been carried on the backs of Black women for so long, and Black women have had to exude that strength. That strong Black woman idea. They have to project that all the time, and that's hard for them. They're human. They have weaknesses. They have vulnerabilities, and so hopefully we'll see that play out more as well. And I think you saw that in Lovecraft Country, and I thought you saw that, we kind of panned then, but I thought you saw that mother's, what she went through. So I think that black women, like I said, with the civil rights struggle, um, it's been said, you know, the black woman is going to save us, but who's going to save black women? So, okay, that's another whole show.
That's another show. I'm gonna have to stay tuned to the next show. I see that happening.
Yeah, this should have been a two-parter.
Yeah, when we were planning, Marcellus and I sat down to plan the series. He just popped off like 25 different topics, and I think he's thought of some more since then. So this could go on for a few years. I hope it does.
It does too.
Let's have to do a couple more. And you touched on this one throughout the program. But do you believe that tokenism is still a problem in horror movies?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I know it was played for a joke in. I don't know if you ever seen Not Another Teen Movie, right?
Yes.
But specifically for black people, where the guys at the party, one of the black characters at the party, and the more popular guy, which was at the time, I want to say his name is Sean Patrick Thomas. He's playing the part, and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And he's like, "I'm just enjoying the party." He's like, "Hey, I'm supposed to be the only black guy here, token black guy." Like, and he's like, "Oh, my bad," and he like gives him dap and leaves the party because he's supposed to be the token black guy. But yes, absolutely, you still see, you know, that trope, that token black person, where at this point they're supposed to play the hard gangster or whatever, and they make those dumb decisions in the horror movie, or they're way too tough or anything like that. Yeah, you definitely see that in black horror. But the good news is you get to see, you know, I have to say, for black women and black men, you get to see those chinks in the armor. They're not one dimensional anymore, and I feel like the more progressive we get, the more we'll be able to see those well-rounded characters. You know, instead of just kind of that token, you know, he's got to be a gangster thug, he has to be a drug dealer, or he has to be, you know, the bartender or anything like that. So it's definitely there, but we are able to see, you know, scratch the surface of being more progressive towards, you know, more well-rounded characters.
Absolutely. I'm gonna let you guys know as soon as I find it. But there's a website that it'll give us a movie or show a score based on the representation and inclusivity of that, and I think that's a great resource because as we go forward, I think filmmakers and producers are thinking about that. How can we be more diverse and how can we be more inclusive? But even to now, we're still seeing issues, whether it's the Oscars or the Emmys, where they're like, okay, so no people of color were nominated in this category. Like, are you serious?
Right.
So it's still something that we're fighting with even today. So, like I said, I'll find a resource and get it to you. But that's a you know, a discussion that needs to continue to happen for sure.
And this one, I think, is a good way to kind of tie things up and wrap it up. And I think you talked about this a little at the end, but what does the future of black horror movies and television look like to you, especially when television series like Lovecraft Country have been canceled? That's a tough one.
That's actually a very interesting point where you know, have a show is that good, and you know, you only get one season. But I definitely see things still, I would say, progressively, slowly moving in the right direction. Better representation, more well-rounded characters. You know, of course, for people of color, but you know, I feel like all characters are being better represented. You know, in the gay community, in the Hispanic community, and things of that nature. So I definitely see things going in the right direction. It's as far as the awards, as Phyllis mentioned before, I think that has to have more representation, but that comes with representation in people who are actually presenting, you know, choosing who gets the awards. That comes with that. So, you know, you got to start somewhere. I think the better the movies are and the more backing we do have, the more they're not going to have a choice but to notice. Is it this? And I feel like, with those shows and movies we just mentioned that, have those well balanced things, like they had no choice but to notice Get Out. They had no choice because it was so it was magnificent. I can't even say it any other way. So I see it going in the right direction. As long as it's not, I feel like you can't make it. You have to see it through Black people's eyes, but you can't make it about Black people. You still have to tell a really good story. Just an example, outside of horror, kind of jumping into something that's right on my alley as well as comic book characters. Nobody expected Black Panther to do so well. Nobody. They was like, okay, we're gonna let this movie happen, but you have to notice no other Avenger was in that movie. It was all about Black Panther and the culture and world building of that movie, and it's, if not the highest, one of the highest grossing single superhero movies that ever came out. And nobody had any choice but to know. So I think even going into different genres besides horror, we're seeing things go in the right direction as long as we have the proper support and the proper people in the correct places. We're going to see progressive. It has, nobody has any choice but to notice how great things can be if you include others.
I want to zoom out and just say that with Black storytelling in general, I hope, and you kind of touched on it, Coffee, I hope we just get to tell our story from our perspective and not so much treat, what it is to be Black in America as the subject matter, because, there's more to us than just our struggles and our plights and things like that. We're very multifaceted. We're not a monolith. And, a lot of times those Oscar nominated films are the slave movies and the civil rights movies and, movies that treat those subjects. So it's like, okay, we get it. Like, we fall in love. Our hearts break. We go through, so many other things just like any other human being in this life. So hopefully we get to tell more of those stories. And it's unavoidable that I don't want to do those colorblind movies where it's not addressed.
Right.
Yes, we're Black, and that should be without question. But tell the whole story.
Tell a good story at the end of the day. Like with the example I gave with Black Panther, it was a good comic book movie, but it told a good story. You can enjoy it if you took the superhero out of it, and it was just the two idealisms of where was this country when we had plight and them kind of battling over their idealism of what we should or shouldn't do. It's a good movie, period. So I think, like he said, you don't want to go colorblind. You want to address, the culture, but you don't want it to be what we were talking about before, where it's so heavy-handed that you can't enjoy the movie for us saying, "Hey, we're Black." No, tell a good story. tell a good story. You don't have to cater to always our trauma and our plight and stuff like that. Just tell a good story. Tell a good love story. Tell a good coming of age story. Tell a good horror story. Just tell a good story. And oh, by the way, hey, this was told by Black people through Black people's eyes. That's how it should be. So yeah, definitely progressing in the correct direction. But I completely agree with Marsalis on that.
A great recent example that comes to my mind from the last few years is Moonlight, just being a
absolutely
great
just really good
story.
Absolutely, absolutely. I don't disagree with that at all. What was it? I forgot the name of the movie. I want to say it's called Streets of Memphis or something like that. With what's the girl that does the Boondocks?
Regina King.
Regina King's in this movie.
If Bill Street Could Talk.
Yeah, Bill Street Could Talk. A good story. Yeah, it starred Black people. It's a very good story. I think she won something for supporting Black actress or something like that. And like I said, it was really good story. And like I said, everything else took is, hey, by the way, this is what it is. Queen and Slim, really good story. It's a black twist on Bunny and Clyde, if you ask me, in modern day settings and modern day issues. Uh, a good story at the end of the day. It made you feel stuff. It's not because they were black. It just made you feel stuff because dang, they own freedom betrayed them. Dang, this is a good. It's told a really good story. So I definitely agree with you, bro. It's just you first and foremost you have to get that story straight and then address everything else.
Amen. That's all I can say.
All right, guys. Well, this was a fantastic program. Um, and real quick, answer in one sentence or less. Since it's almost Halloween, if you could recommend one movie that people need to watch this weekend, what would you suggest? Each of you.
You got it, Mark. Let me hear you say first.
And we talked about this last night. I love the movie People Under the Stairs, and this is one of those movies it's one of those movies that came out on TBS back in the '90s, and they would show it every year, all day. One of those types of movies. But it's campy. It's a Wes Craven film before he did Scream. So, and it has some social justice messaging in it as well. There's a white husband and wife that are like terrible slumlords, and just hilarity ensues. So, if anything, go watch People on the Stairs. And like I said before, Blood Couple is just, I can't recommend that more highly enough. So, those two I'll give you.
I'd have to say two as well. But if I'm going from the '90s, I would have to say Tales from the Hood. Definitely check that out. And if I had to say something recent, definitely, if you haven't seen it, definitely check out Get Out. Like, yeah, I mean, that's a must see at this point. But those would be my answers. Go ahead and check those.
There you have it.
All right, thank you guys. Last bit of housekeeping. How about you tell them about our next program in November, Marcellus?
Absolutely. Our next program is going to be healthy eating for Thanksgiving. We know Thanksgiving season is coming up, and we know sort of the health challenges that the Black community faces. So, Ms. Rhonda Hines from the Arkansas Minority Health Commission will be joining us to talk about what we can do to make things a little bit healthier. She's going to be sharing with us entrees, appetizers, as well as desserts. So I'm so excited about that. That's going to be November the 19th. That's out of our regular schedule. So stay tuned for more information. Check the library's website as well as its Facebook page. We'll be getting that out to you. But we'll be talking about healthy eating in the month of November. So we're excited about it.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks again to both of you and everyone for watching. This program was recorded, so be sure to share it um, on both Facebook, YouTube, wherever you want, or if you tuned in late and missed the beginning, as soon as this is over, you should be able to go back and see what you missed. But any final remarks either of you would like to say? Let you get the last words here.
It's absolutely been a pleasure. Shout out to A5A. Please check out the page, Drink More Coffee, on YouTube. Check it out, subscribe, comment on the next one. It's my next big movie because as y'all guys can see, this is my new bar area. I'm still getting things set up, but everything will be set up by Spider-Man No Way Home. That's going to be my next big movie review. So look out for that. And in between time, check out my shorts with my drinks that I'll be making in between now.
As always, the Hot Springs branch of the NAACP meets on the second Saturday at 2 p.m. We would love to have you. You can find out more information on our website, NAACPHS6013.org, or you can go to our YouTube channel or our Facebook page. We would love to have you. We're the oldest civil rights organization in the country, and we're fighting for you. Also, in the month of September, we just want to make a special note of breast cancer awareness. So we want to stress the importance of early detection. We know that breast cancer is prevalent, and it's especially prevalent in our Black women. And men too can get breast cancer. So get your annual mammogram, and just knowing is very empowering. So just want to put that out there because my mother is a 6-year breast cancer survivor. So we are grateful to God for that. So definitely take care of our health for sure.
Good night, everyone.
All right, y'all have a good evening.